Welcome back to Square Off. Abortion rights are on a winning streak since the Supreme Court threw out a woman's constitutional right to an abortion last year. Ohio's landslide vote last week to protect abortion rights was the 7th consecutive successful ballot measure since the Roe decision. Will Arizona voters extend that winning streak next year? Joining us to discuss that and more are Christine Jones, former Republican candidate for governor, and Dawn Penich-Thacker, a Democratic consultant at Agave Strategy. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thank you.
Good morning.
First thing, disclosures. Do you have any connections to campaigns or candidates we're going to talk about today, Christine?
Not on my behalf.
Not
Dawn?
working with any of them.
Okay, good to know. I want to start with a question about that No Labels interview we just heard. Christine, I'll start with you. Do you think there is a real desire, hunger for a third party out there to offer up presidential and vice presidential candidates?
I sure hear it a lot from people because, you know, despite the fact that we kind of know who the two candidates are going to be, a lot of people don't like either one of them. So I do hear it from people, you know, is this the cycle, Christine, when we could potentially get an independent or a third party candidate? So there is a desire. The question is, and he would not give you the answer to this, who's funding it and what infrastructure do they have? Because without that, it's really tough. Not just getting on the ballot, but then actually getting out into the grassroots and making a difference.
Do you take it at face value, what No Labels is saying?
Absolutely not. Watching that interview, it is so clear that, you know, they are refusing to disclose who is backing them, where the money is coming from. They are fighting to keep people who registered for their new party, they are fighting to keep them off the ballot. I think this is a major voter beware that solutions, if there really is a two-party problem in this country, dark money, clandestine billionaires are not going to be the solution. And I think that's exactly what we see: obfuscation and clandestine manipulation of a political system, and using Arizona and 11 other states right now as a petri dish for an experiment that we don't even know what the end game is.
You've pointed out, though, you got to start somewhere.
You do, and maybe, Bram, and there, to Dawn's point, maybe there will be a time when a third-party candidate can win. It's not this cycle, and you got to be honest about how you get there, right? You probably do have to build out the party infrastructure, which has taken 200 years for the other parties to do. But there's a desire. People don't live in the extremes. They live somewhere, closer to the middle. And so, that could eventually, in a generation or something, yield some fruit for the middle.
All right, let's move on to abortion rights. It was a decisive issue in Democrats' favor in Virginia. We know about the Ohio statewide vote enshrining abortion rights. Dawn, does that tell you Arizona's vote next year, if it gets on the ballot, would be a slam dunk?
I think so. I think that every poll we've taken, every time this question has come up in other states, we see that voters come out from every political party, every political persuasion to protect or enshrine rights to abortion access. When it is asked as a single question, I think we have every reason to feel extremely confident. It gets a little bit more complicated when we think of it as candidates who campaign on largely a pro-abortion access ticket. I think that's where we start to see that most Americans and most Arizonans are not single issue voters. And so that's where Democrat candidates who are running need to still be talking about the other issues that voters care about: the economy, immigration, climate, and just being able to afford life. And so I think, yeah, we have every reason to expect another big win in Arizona for abortion rights, but it can't be the only issue.
Republicans are having a tough time figuring out how to talk about abortion now in the wake of that Supreme Court decision. What's your advice?
Well, look, it is a gut punch what happened in Ohio, particularly for the people in Arizona who have been advocating for abortion restrictions for the last couple of decades. And the Center for Arizona Policy certainly has its work cut out for it, because the overwhelming majority of people, Dawn, to your point, feel like there should be some access and there should be some exceptions to the absolute prohibition. So then you have to ask yourself, if more than 50% of the population think it's good to have some access, what is the response? And I think I would say bifurcate the candidate issue from the ballot issue on the issue of abortion itself, because I'm starting to hear for the first time evangelical leaders talking about the difference between being pro-life and anti-abortion. And that is a very powerful message, because I can be against abortion. I can think that is a horrible sin, but I still think you have a right to choose whether you do it or not. So
that's pro-choice.
that is undeniably pro-choice. So people in their pulpits now are teaching their congregations, we can be wholesome, believers and still take a pro-choice stance.
Interesting. Getting back to your point, I believe this is the first initiative that would be voted on during a presidential campaign. In that context, does it make it different, bringing out more voters, different kind of voters than you have in these off-year elections?
Well, I think it makes a big difference to the candidates in particular. I mean, people on the Democratic side at the top of the ticket, they need, this measure to be on the bottom of the ballot here in Arizona to drive voter turnout, because to Christine's point, there's not a lot of enthusiasm for some of the candidates at the very tippy top over there. So we are relying on people to be motivated to protect, their access to reproductive health care, maybe some other issues that might be at the bottom of the ballot, and Democratic candidates are relying on that.
Okay.
Not a lot of enthusiasm, said very diplomatically.
Very much so.
All right, got to end it there.